Hey everyone, how's it going? This is the Bald Metal Nerd coming at you with another video. And I'm recording this video at the tail end of Martin Luther King Day, or, we'll just call it Milk Day, ha ha ha, because I know, really terrible joke. But anyway, I just want to start this video off by saying that, of course, the primary reason that Americans remember Dr. King is because he's obviously probably the most famous crusader for civil rights in American history, right? And his achievements in furthering the cause of racial justice are fantastic, and he massively improved America in that regard, right? So he definitely deserves to be remembered for that reason. But if you live in America or you know anything about America at all, sadly, we still have, we're definitely way better off than where we were as far as all that goes, but we still have a long way to go to really achieve true justice between the various races, right? We're a long way away from it actually being just and totally fair and all that. There's still definitely biases against certain groups here in the U.S. That's a fact. But anyway, that's not primarily what I'm here to talk about. I'm here to talk about the dream that Dr. King had that is not nearly as publicized. And I'll give my theory as to why that is. He also had a dream for economic justice, and I'm going to link an article in the video description. It is unfortunately to the Washington Post, which is definitely not my favorite publication because of their biases that I don't agree with. But I will link it because I think this is a fairly good article, and it has some good quotes by Dr. King. But I'm going to go ahead and just read a very brief snippet of this so you get an idea of what I'm talking about. King's dream of economic equality has been harder to achieve. Why? For one, he demanded that Americans restructure capitalism both at home and abroad, but he also challenged a core part of the American dream, the false assumption that those who work hard can move upward. King rejected the bootstrap myth because he understood that many people, notably those of color, didn't even have boots. Now, let's talk about that a little bit, all right? Because, of course, the quote, American dream is you can achieve great things if you simply work really hard, right? Well, okay. What about, that is true for a very tiny percentage of people, right? Steve Jobs would be an example of it, what's his name? Jeff Bezos, Bill Gates, et cetera, et cetera. Now, Bill Gates did come from money. That much I know for sure. But the other ones, I'm honestly not entirely sure their backgrounds, but that's neither here nor there. So yes, there are the examples, the extraordinary examples of people rocketing to extreme wealth based on a business or an idea or whatever, right? There are those people. They do exist. However, what about the millions upon millions upon millions upon millions upon millions upon millions of people who essentially work very hard? They work maybe, one or two jobs, but the only jobs that they're really qualified for are, we'll just call them low-end jobs, right? Like retail or restaurants or whatever, right? If these people are working, let's say, 60 hours a week in two jobs or whatever, are you really telling me that they aren't working as hard as, the captains of industry, as it were? Of course not. They're working very hard. If they're putting in 60 hours a week or whatever, they're working very hard. But are they getting millions of dollars? Of course not. Of course not. So yes, there are examples of extreme success, but there are also many more examples by a huge margin of people who work hard and never get anywhere, right? Essentially, they're stuck in a dead end existence. And of course, the argument can be made, oh, well, those people are stuck in, you know, that because they have no ambition, they don't try to sharpen their skills to do something better, yada. And that is true to a certain degree, right? But I've really thought about this, right? And thing is, let's say everyone in this country had a bachelor's degree. It's already starting to head that way, but let's pretend that happens, right? There are only so many jobs that are like that people are going to be able to do, right? There's not an infinite amount of work for people of that skill level. You know, for example, as I've said in many of my videos, I'm an IT professional, right? Now, are there a decent number of jobs that are, you know, quote, for IT professionals? Of course, but there's not an infinite number of jobs for IT professionals. So, you know, there's not an infinite number of highly skilled jobs out there. There are some, yes, but there's not an infinite number of them. And just because more people, let's pretend, you know, all of a sudden we had 100 million more IT professionals in this country. What would that do? Well, I don't think there'd be 100 million new IT jobs. Sure, some jobs would get filled, and then after that, there would be an extreme overabundance of IT professionals, and that would make, well, obviously, the old supply and demand type of thing. That would drive the value of being an IT professional right down into the toilet, right? There'd be far too many people who had that skill set for it to be a valuable skill set at that point. So that's kind of the point I'm trying to make, is there's only so many of those high school jobs. The way our economy works is there's going to be larger numbers of more lowly skilled jobs than higher skilled jobs. It's, you know, a pyramid. It represents a pyramid, isn't that something? So is our economy a giant pyramid scheme? One way to look at it. Now, I'm not saying that people who work in restaurants and, you know, if you only ever work in a restaurant and retail, do you deserve to make as much money as a professional or CEO or whatever? No, I wouldn't say that, but do you deserve to make what I would call a living wage, have health care, have decent housing, basically have a relatively good quality of life? I would say the answer to that question is a definite yes. You absolutely deserve to have a good quality of life, period. All right? If you're doing that sort of work, you definitely deserve to have a decent life. I think everyone, as human beings, deserves to have a decent life. And until we actually work towards that as a society, we're going to continue to have these problems. I mean, wealth inequality is even worse now than it was when Dr. King was alive, because back when he was around, I think the CEO of a typical company made 20 to 30 times what their average worker did. Nowadays, the gulf is hundreds or thousands of times. So yeah, it's gotten way worse since the 60s, and it was bad back then, so it's really bad now. I don't think it's unreasonable to try to, you know, modify capitalism to a point to where instead of, you know, one guy getting 9 slices of the pie and then the other, you know, everyone else gets fighting over that crumbs over the last slice, I think it definitely, you know, because if you can manage to amass that sort of wealth in our society, you have what I would call a societal contract to give back to your society, right? And frankly, that's through a higher tax rate than what normal people pay. Now, what that tax rate should be, that's up for debate, right? That's a totally a debate that we could have, figure it out. To pay for the infrastructure to allow people to have a quote, better life. So, as of right now, we actually have a shot at this sort of justice in this country. And of course, I'm going to, bang the drum yet again for Bernie Sanders. Right now, he is actually in first place amongst the Democratic nominees, according to a few polls. Recently, the Des Moines Register poll, he was first in that. And historically, candidates that have been first in that poll have actually gone on to get the nomination. So it actually could happen. So we have a real chance at a real shot at this sort of justice. If you want to see this sort of justice happen, of course, I would say vote for Bernie. If not, that's totally fine too. I know that there's definitely going to be people who are going to disagree with this, and that's totally fine. Feel free. I'm sure there will be some economic experts that'll tell me why this stuff can't work and why our current system is perfectly fine and good and everyone deserves exactly what they're getting and we need no readjustment and everything's great, right? Because, my boss, for example, at work is a big, he's a Trump guy and, we go back and forth, but it's respectful. He's like, oh yeah, I think the economy's doing great. I'm like, and then he tells me how, and I'm like, well, you know what? I haven't felt it at all. I'm not feeling this great economy. My wages have gone down, but I don't really blame Trump on that. It's more my personal situation. But I certainly don't see things getting any better. So anyway, I know I rambled on long enough. I hope you guys enjoyed this. Again, I think it's important to honor Dr. King, and if you want to further honor him, I say let's shoot for that economic justice as well. So anyway, that's basically it. Thanks so much for watching. As always, live long and prosper and keep rocking.